I'm definitely not used
Well,
to that.
hello. Oh, go ahead. What did you say?
I was gonna say I love the faces because I don't get that with my students.
Yeah, we got lots of smiling faces. I love it. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today from wherever you are in the world. I'm so glad you're here for this program to learn more about unlocking real-world benefits of technology and AI for adults and caregivers. My name is Ellie Garrity. I'm the Senior Director of the Career and Professional Programs team here at your Alumni Association. This event is part of your Alumni Association's commitment to lifelong learning, a way to connect Terps across generations with opportunities to grow, stay curious, and live lives of meaning and impact. So today we hope you're curious about AI, and I think just about everyone is at this point. I'm joined by Dr. Galina Reitz, a UMD professor and a strategic leader in higher education with over 20 years of experience advancing innovation, digital accessibility, and inclusive learning. Her research focuses on accessible interface design, especially voice-based technologies and AI tools that support individuals with disabilities, including those with Parkinson's disease. I'm excited to learn something new with you today, Dr. Reed. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you to get things started.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. I so appreciate you being here. I will go ahead and share my screen and start us off. I wanted to preface this presentation by saying that this will be as practical as possible. I will not be giving you an academic talk whatsoever. And I know that there's a range of expertise on this call. And so I would love to keep this an open conversation. So if there's something that you'd like to drop in the chat or if there's a question, I really want this to be informative for both of us. And just to give you a little bit of background, the reason why I have a photo, one of those stock photos with a red X across it, is because I, for the past 20 years, have been working with older adults in various capacities, mostly intergenerational relationship building, but really also what are really great ways to incorporate technology in someone's home that's not obtrusive, that really works, that can be helpful. So all of this is coming from a place of experience of some of my favorite technologies that I see working in someone's real life, in someone's home. So I will not be citing papers. I will not be talking about research, although I'm happy to do that offline or another time. But I really wanted to share with you some of my favorite technologies that are out there that I think are really helpful, some things that are up and coming, and also talk about AI, really focused on ChatGPT mostly because for the last 6 to 8 months, I'm really finding it so useful, not only in my own personal life, but also with the elders that I work with caregivers. And so I wanted to, if you haven't already, really kind of set the stage for you to download it, whether on your mobile phone or in a browser, and to give you some real case examples of how I'm using it, how caregivers are using it, some real use cases. And of course, I would love to hear from you. So these slides are not anything phenomenal. I will share every single thing with you. I also have a very kind of messy list of resources that is my own, and I'm happy to share with all of you. But it's really things that I've sort of collected along my journey and things that really work. And so, once again, I'd love to hear from you as well. And if there's anything that you'd love to share with the group, this is really the space for it. So, these are the stock images crossed out because these are images of real older adults that I have worked with for quite a few years and throughout my research with voice technology. I am proud to be sort of the pioneer researcher with Amazon Alexa and Echo. For many years, I worked with Alexa in older adult homes and supported caregivers with voice technology. So there's lots of lessons learned, and I'm really excited to share some things that I've picked up along the way. So to break down the buzz, this is probably the only quote unquote academic slide I'll have. Really, what I've tried to, like I said, gather here is just some things that I've had experience with, whether it's communication technologies or wearables, things that to me really make sense. And just to kind of give you some background, I have worked primarily with older adults who have some form of cognitive impairment. So supporting those who are part of that community has been very, very important to me. I myself was a caregiver for a grandmother for many years. I am now stepping into the role of support system for my parents who are in their 60s and 70s. And so everything is coming from a place of, does it really work? And how can we make it easy? Can I buy it on Amazon? But there's been a lot of buzzwords. Everybody's talking about AI and smart assistants and IoT and LLMs. And to be honest with you, none of that is really important, because what matters is, how do I get it on my phone? What is it good for? How can I use it in my daily life? And generative AI is such a big topic right now. We're talking about ethical considerations and safety and security. And I have to tell you that this is not that type of talk. I think we're all worried about our data being shared. And it's just one of those things that we sort of have to accept. And so this is not an ethical talk by any means, and it's just one of those things that with generative AI, which is really creating new things, using it not like a typical search engine, but really sort of having that conversation. Yes, you're giving up your data, but to me, it's worth it. And so I hope you kind of take that into consideration, that I won't be talking about all of the bad things or good things about either of these technologies, but how can they really help us? So voice assistants are very, very useful. I think probably most of you have a voice assistant in your home. I have to say that Siri is not one of my favorites. I hope she doesn't wake up on my phone. In my home, I have been experimenting with voice assistants for many years. I was a very early adopter of Amazon Alexa. I really enjoy Amazon's ecosystem. I am now more focused on Google and Google Nest, because to me, it just makes sense for my family. And I'll talk about sort of what that ecosystem looks like. And maybe, you can think about incorporating some of those technologies in your home. But I use these voice assistants from anything from medication reminders to check-ins. I have set up so my kids can call their grandma on a Google Home. There's a camera, so I can check in on what is going on in the house if I want to, from my phone, from my Google app. So there's lots of different ways that I have sort of created this technology space, but it's still useful. It's not too complicated. And I have been adding sort of different technologies to that starting ecosystem. So anything from a smart doorbell, which I think a lot of us have, being able to see who's at the door, speaking to whoever's at the door. I have a smart garage door opener. I have a smart door lock on my basement just in case somebody gets locked out, right? And it's just a 4-digit code and you can enter the home. So there's lots of use cases that we can talk about. I have to say, when I was doing my research with Amazon Alexa, particularly for caregivers, one of the most useful ways to utilize the voice assistant was to have an Alexa on the first floor, on the second floor, maybe in the basement, or in spaces where the caregiver is not really close to their loved one, and use it as sort of a walkie-talkie or an intercom to talk to the person that you're caring for. So one specific case that I remember was a caregiver. It was a husband and wife. The wife had dementia, and it was hard for her to get around, and sometimes she needed the help of her husband. So he was a power user. He installed the devices in pretty much every single room. It was the little hockey puck of Alexa, and he could check in with her. And he felt like if he was working in the basement, he still had some way to contact her upstairs, and he didn't want to have her walk up and down the stairs, or for him to walk up and down the stairs. So that was something that I hadn't envisioned, but it was a very, very powerful use case. And of course, everything from putting on an audiobook and having it read to someone, to just asking about the weather however many times you want and not getting aggravated. However, I have to say, from what I've seen in with the advancements of ChatGPT and these conversational agents, I'm really seeing ChatGPT being much more useful than the typical voice assistant like Alexa or Google. And so I'm hoping that some of the cases that I talk about today will really sort of spark your interest and maybe encourage you to continue to use it if you are, or to jump in and use it. But I think there's lots of really great ways to interact with this type of technology that can be very useful. So I wanted to cover, as I mentioned, some of my favorite technologies, whether they're focused on wellness and health, communication, and of course, kind of jump into ChatGPT and give you some real ways to use it. And I have to say, it has really transformed my life. I know that's a little bit dramatic, but in so many ways, it's so helpful. It's not the end all be all, of course. I'm not relying on it fully for, answering my questions or healthcare or medical, but I have to say it has really revolutionized the way that I interact with sort of these search technologies. So some of my favorites are, and I promise I'm not sponsored by Amazon, but I have worked with their tools for quite some time. Some new healthcare, I think, advancements, they're really great at that because, I mean, they're a logistics company. So if you need something to get to you really fast, it's Amazon. So PillPack is very popular with some of the participants that I work with. They now have incorporated this new sort of connecting you to a healthcare provider very quickly just through your Amazon app. And so some of it, includes insurance, but if you really need to see somebody right away or have a prescription provided to you, Amazon has really streamlined that. I also wanted to talk about a service that I really, really appreciated from Amazon. They have now discontinued it and have changed it a little bit. It was called, well, it had a couple of different names. It was called Alexa Together back in the day when I was using it and testing it out with my mom, who was, in her early 50s and was very offended by the fact that I was using caregiver software with her. But my parents are always my guinea pigs. But it was such a great way to kind of check in on my parents because they had an Alexa, I had one, and it was a great way to sort of see what the capabilities of the software were. And it was great. It was free at first, then it was $19.99, and now they've discontinued it. But what it has morphed into is Alexa Emergency Assist. And so if you have a loved one, or just really, if you're interested in having a tool that, calls 911 and can really reach for support, this is a great way to do this. I'm sure a lot of you don't have home phones anymore, right? We all have cell phones. There's no way, for us to really reach out to anyone without a cell phone. And so I have taught my kids to, of course, go to a neighbor if there's an emergency, but also how to, call 911 or the fire department through their Google Home. And so Alexa Emergency Assist is great. It's relatively inexpensive, and I think it's a great tool to be able to call out for help if it's needed. Also, there's a couple of other things that Amazon has added. Astro is their newest addition. It's not for everyone. I have to be honest. It's a little intelligent kind of robot who walks around your house. It's expensive. I think it's in the range of $1,500, so it's not for everyone. But it does work with Alexa. It works with Alexa Emergency Assist. It is interactive. So if this is something that may be of interest to you, I would really encourage you to go on the Amazon website and poke around and kind of get familiar. I think it's really interesting. Like I said, a lot of these are either too expensive or not really, may not serve everyone's interest, but I think it's great to sort of know what's out there. And we're seeing a lot more kind of these physical interactive technologies being brought into the home. I
Dr.
also want,
Reitz,
yeah,
Can I interrupt for 1 second? We had something in the
Course.
chat that I think is relevant. You mentioned that you tried out some of these different products with your own mother, and Todd asked a two-part question, but one of the parts was really just backing up. Do you have any suggestions about how to navigate these conversations as a caregiver, possibly with your parents, how to, get them on board for either the conversation or the invasiveness of some of this technology? And then the second part is, if you're not physically near them, do you have recommendations for how to kind of troubleshoot getting what they need?
Really, really great question. So, you know, when I used to work in retirement communities, the big question was, how do you kind of approach this conversation about end of life choices, and setting the stage for being prepared, and who keeps your passwords, and how are those passwords saved? And I have to say, I don't know if I have the best answer. I think it's you just have to start somewhere. And for me, with my parents, they know, of course, I work in the technology space, but for me, it's sort of, they have a lot of questions for me, and I don't always have the time. And so for me, it's sort of outsourcing, the help to maybe a technology that can be useful. So I started with Alexa and with these kind of systems because they became very popular and super mainstream. So I don't think it's infantilizing to have an Alexa in your home, to ask it questions. And so for me, the conversation starter was, listen, there's these are cool technologies that are out there. They're relatively inexpensive. Should we try them out and see how they work? To be honest, being, for me personally, just sort of being brave, and I come from a different country and different cultural norms. And so breaching that conversation of, well, have you started a will, or have you saved your passwords anywhere outside of a little black book next to your computer? And so, like I said, I don't know if I have the best answer, but it's really just kind of starting anywhere. And with tech, especially with the older adults and caregivers that I work with, it's sort of saying, this is not going to, watch you. This is not a camera where, we're going to watch your every move. This is just something to make me feel better about you, knowing that you woke up in the morning and started your coffee maker, that sort of thing. And so if you are away from your loved one, a lot of these tools you can ship directly to their home. There's lots of great tutorials. They're very easy to install. And so you may need a little bit of a tech support relationship, but I think it's just sort of saying, listen, we're all online. Everything is technology. We have to bring you on board. And so that's kind of the answer, non-answer that I have. Um, so I wanted to touch on cognitive tools. I could talk about this all day, and I know we don't have enough time. And so I just want to make sure that I leave enough time for a great conversation. From my experience, I can't say that any of these are particularly helpful, like the Lumosity or brain training. This is just from the research. I don't see any valuable data that really shows me that any of these will have any impact. And of course, as not a medical professionals, I can't really attest to any of the dementia drugs or anything like that. Everything that I focus on is the psychosocial support. So to me, if you can't be in person, my mentor is in his 80s and we still play words with friends. And this is our brain training tool that keeps us connected. We chat, we do puzzles together. So to me, there's lots of other ways to enhance cognition that doesn't necessarily, have you download an app and, repeat a particular task. So these are just some ideas that I have, that I think could, be very helpful, if you are a caregiver, if you're caring for someone, or even if you enjoy games and you like prompts and storytelling. There's lots of great ways to boost cognition, but by no means do I think it's an exhaustive list. I also want to talk about real things, like real human connection. Technology is, of course, very important. I think technology can connect us. This is why I'm very passionate about intergenerational work. But there's also real things that we could do with our grandkids. And one of the most important things for my family is to make sure that my kids are involved with their grandparents, who are the best. And so there's lots of the summer camp on the left that you're seeing. This is in Maryland in Silver Spring. The Grandkid Investigator Kit is such a great tool. This is something my friend developed, Isabel Tom. She writes on aging. It's just a really fun thing to do with your grandkids, or with just a loved one or an intergenerational activity. So lots of cool ways to incorporate technology to still talk to one another. And technology is a facilitator. It's really not sort of the answer to everything. I also wanted to share some communication tools that I found particularly helpful. I have to say, for quite some time, working with AARP in the past, their development of the grant pad, also lots of other tools. There's just the traditional iPad, there's the Samsung tablets. I think those can be really helpful. I have to say, I was a little bit hesitant for a while with the grant pad, but it can and it is a useful tool. I think if you are someone who just needs a larger font or larger icons or easy video calling, I'm very cautious for technology to not be infantilizing and to not look different. Nobody wants to feel like they have this big clunky thing, right? Or something that is a mobile phone but doesn't look like a smartphone. So the crayon pad can be a good solution. I have to say, I'm a believer now. I've tested it, and I think it's a great solution if you have a loved one who does need those types of tools. Marco Polo is a great tool for messaging and for video messaging. I think for those of us who are maybe not super comfortable with iMessage video, or sending kind of voice notes, Marco Polo could be a great solution. It's specifically designed for, intergenerational conversations. It's much more slower paced, so it's not as intense as iMessage. Although I have to say that with FaceTime, I think the new update does have transcription, which is very, very helpful. So if you're FaceTiming with someone, there is transcription at the bottom, just in case you're not understanding everything they're saying. So it really is you have to find a tool that works for you. But I think Marco Polo is a great one. And, I've seen that older adults and caregivers prefer it because it's just more laid back. It's sort of like check-ins. It's not as intense, and it's easy to use. So I really, really enjoy that. I also wanted to, and please feel free to stop me at any time if there's anything that you think is interesting. I also wanted to touch on wearables. Uh, this is also something that's a personal preference. I have to say there's lots of wearables on the consumer market that can be helpful. So the new Apple Watch has fall detection. Of course, it's not foolproof, but I think it can be helpful. It can, call out 911 if someone does experience a fall or an injury, which can be very, very helpful. But there's also less expensive options like the uh, uh, Bay Alarm Medical SOS smartwatch, which is way less expensive than the Apple Watch. So there's lots of solutions that I think that are out there that could be helpful. If you are not comfortable with Alexa or a Google Home, the SwitchBot Hub is a great way to basically connect the ecosystem of technologies that you have, whether it's smart lights, or your Ring doorbell. So it really covers both Alexa and Google, and it's a great way to kind of have all of that with a physical knob as a control. So that's a really good option. And of course, the typical, the Oura Ring. I really enjoy my Oura Ring. I have to say it is on the more expensive side, but when you're getting sick, it notifies you at least 3 to 5 days before you're getting sick that your body is experiencing some symptoms. So that can be really helpful. Of course, it doesn't have any other super insightful alerts other than, sleep tracking and steps and that sort of thing, but it can be really helpful. So I will have links to all of these in case you want to kind of poke around. Of course, there's also other things like, for a while we were doing research with the pet seal, where older adults were petting a seal, and it was sort of this kind of interactive physical device. Now we have little companion dogs, and I know that some of these may not be suitable for someone in your life, but for others it may be something that's really great and helpful and can alleviate some tension or negative behavior. So I think there's lots of things that we could incorporate in the home that could be helpful. Virtual reality is also an option. The virtual reality goggles are now really accessible on the market. I have to say, there's still, it makes us a little bit dizzy. You need somebody to troubleshoot it and, be with you to show you how to use it. But they are available on the market, and I have seen some of my colleagues do research with the Meta Quest goggles with older adults, and especially, having you walk through a scene from the 1950s or something familiar, or playing music that you really enjoy, or flying through the sky. And so there's lots of good simulations that I think can be helpful. Um, so I wanted to kind of touch on, what does a smart home look like? And I have to say, to me, the best option is a DIY. It's sort of picking out the things that make sense for your home, for the people that live in your home, for you, for your loved ones. I have to say, the ones that I think most make the most impact are, like I said, the smart plugs. So basically, a Wi-Fi plug that you can insert anything into it. So whether it's a light and it makes it automatically voice activated, you can plug in your coffee maker and have coffee made for you in the morning. Sensor lights, which can be really helpful. Of course, the traditional smart speakers that typically control everything. Of course, a lot of motion detection devices as well. I know that some of my caregivers that I work with are using very inexpensive sensors from Amazon to know that, let's say, their loved one is opening up their cupboard and is taking out a coffee cup in the morning, or once they get out of bed, there's a message being sent to the caregiver to know that this person woke up this morning and was able to leave the bed from a smart mat, pressure mat on the floor next to their bed. So I think a combination of these really makes the perfect solution. There is, no one size fits all. Smart lights are great. I mean, I'm a super heavy user of voice activated technology, where I'm laying in bed late at night and I want to change the thermostat. I want to turn all off the lights in the basement, instead of walking up and down and doing it manually. Door and window sensors, right? That could be really helpful for you as a caregiver to know if somebody's opening certain doors. And of course, wearables that make sense. I think for some, basically an SOS detection is really important. So the Lively Mobile 2 is really helpful. There's wearable blood pressure monitors. And, a lot of these technologies can be found on Amazon. And I have a list of things that I think might be helpful that I'll share with you all. So everything is in my working document, and it's a little messy, but I think can be useful. But ultimately, a full package to me looks like, where are we, what are the greatest needs, and how are we making this technology work without, putting up cameras and monitoring someone. So that's really kind of my perspective. I've also gathered resources. As I mentioned, I work with older adults who have dementia, with their caregivers. We really try to figure out a way to not take away all of the systems that work in someone's life, like paper and pencil calendar. We don't all need to transfer all of your things to Google Calendar if it doesn't work for your loved one. Some of the caregivers that I work with need certain technologies that are for those who have greater needs. And so the spectrum is really wide. So I've selected and created sort of an Amazon list that I think will be helpful if you are caring for someone who has greater needs, whether physical or cognitive. And so safe aging in place is really important. And so once again, putting some motion detection lights to the bathroom or up the stairs, or having a chair that lifts can be really helpful. And of course, the smart plugs, just putting them everywhere because voice control is so powerful. So all of these I will share with you, but I wanted to mention that it doesn't necessarily have to be super high tech for it to be really helpful. Um, excuse me, and to work well. So, oh, Ellie,
Hi. Can we do a question break? We have a few questions.
yes, absolutely.
So one of the questions, one from Eddie was, what are the best options for non-Alexa options for folks that are Apple users? Do you have any on your list?
So Alexa works with Apple and Android. Was that
Okay,
the
we'll see
question?
what, yeah, that was the question. So we'll see what Eddie chimes in. But can you just roll through your list of other options that are similar to Alexa but aren't Alexa? I know you said Google Home. There were a few others.
Also, Apple has the HomePod.
Okay.
I have to say Samsung has a couple of options, but I really wouldn't recommend those. Um, I honestly, because both Amazon and Google Home have such strong ecosystems and they have a lot of other technologies that connect to those two main systems, I would choose to go with either of those. And they're very inexpensive because you can get a little Alexa hockey puck voice assistant for 29.99, as well as the Google Home. So they're relatively inexpensive, and those connect to there's Android application and an Apple application, so they will connect with whatever device you have.
Okay. And the other question from Robin was if alarm systems are linked with smart technology, but there is not internet available, what type of smart technology, what exists for the backups?
hmm Um, for the backup, it's really one of those kind of mainstream systems like ADT, for example, where they come to your house. It's relatively expensive. You have to pay per month. And if the Wi-Fi goes down, they have, and this is sort of beyond my technology skills, but they have a way to monitor that. And that's kind of the only solution. Everything that we talk about does need Wi-Fi and internet access. So it's not the best solution, but that's pretty much it. And I have to say I have an alarm system in my home, and it has an app with it. It's very user friendly, and it has a backup just in case my internet goes down. So that's the solution that I have for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Great questions. Thank you all. Okay, I will jump into chat because ChatGPT is, I have to say, has become probably one of my favorite tools. To be honest with you, probably even a year ago, or maybe more than a year ago, we first started talking about ChatGPT and generative AI and these kind of new models. Even though I'm completely immersed in technology, I was just a little apprehensive. I didn't quite get it. I didn't, when you just sort of don't want to download yet another tool. That's sort of, I was so fatigued and so over yet another thing on my phone that I have to learn or, conversate with. I was just using Google as my search engine. I had my system of apps. Even though I like to experiment and adopt, I was just at that point where I just didn't know if I if I wanted to learn something new. And I have to say, the first step that I took was I just downloaded it on my phone. I didn't pay for it, so obviously there's a free version and a paid version, which gives you a little bit of enhanced conversations and sort of better feedback. And I really didn't know what to ask it. I have to be honest. With Google, we know you go on Google, you have a question, or you want a definition, or you're trying to find a recipe. So I didn't really know how to sort of quote unquote talk to this thing. And I have to be honest, it took a little bit of time. And so I really encourage you to just start somewhere. What I will show you now, what I will share with you is just sort of some real world examples of cases, how helpful it can be. The first one I will have to say is I have many personal examples, but this is with my parents who are non English speakers. So English is their second language. And for my entire life, my mom has been sending me her emails to proofread. And I know that that does not sound like it's a big deal. Okay. But when you're getting, tens of emails a week, when you have things going on. So she's sending me emails because she's so worried about her English. I'm proofreading them. I have to say, at one point, I got to the point where I just can't do this anymore. So I taught her how to use ChatGPT, how to copy and paste her emails into the chat window, and just say, ChatGPT, please revise this email so it sounds like a native English speaker, or please correct my mistakes. It has completely changed my life. I haven't heard from her. I haven't received any emails to proofread, and I know that's a silly example, but down the road as a caregiver, I know it will be very, very helpful to sort of know how to help, or if there's certain questions, I could just plug into ChatGPT and get the support. So we know that people are using using the tool for emails, for grocery lists, for learning new things, for assisting with daily tasks. I did a presentation for specifically activity directors in retirement communities and how they can use ChatGPT to make an activity plan personalized and customized for each of their older adults they're working with. So this really takes away a lot of the grunt work. And this is something that we can all do. So it has completely changed my life. I hope you engage with it if you haven't already, and really sort of dig even deeper on how it can support aging in place. And so I would, like I said, I could talk about this forever. I would love to continue this conversation if you're interested offline or one-on-one. But I use this chatbot to really generate human-like text, but so much more. Anything from summarizing things, from writing messages, emails, from brainstorming ideas. I have to say, I use it for silly things like when I have decision fatigue, I take a picture at the grocery store of the shampoo aisle and say, please choose one for me, right? It's just very simple things that I have offloaded into my chat ecosystem that I think can be very helpful. I also want to say that ChatGPT is not the only chatbot out on the market. There's lots of other ones. I prefer chat because it's sort of the Swiss Army knife of tools. There's lots of ways that you can interact with it. But there's also Claude, there's Gemini, there's Copilot, which is more for the Office apps ecosystem. And by no means am I saying ChatGPT is the best tool on the planet, but that's just something that I find has been really helpful. Um, on these slides, I'm not going to go through this, but I did ask ChatGPT to give me a generated sort of report of how it stacks up to its other competitors. So it gave me a very nice chart for what each of these tools is best for. So I didn't make this, ChatGPT made it. And there's lots of ways to use it. So anything from research, medical topics, generating ideas for meals, for exercises. When I have questions about my kids' symptoms, I type them in. Do I fully, completely believe everything it throws back? Absolutely not. But it's a great way to sort of get us started. It can create medication reminders. So if there's lots of complicated different pieces of information that you have for a loved one or for yourself, you can just throw that all in there and it will completely streamline everything. So it really simplifies things into plain terms. So if it's something that you're not familiar with, I find it so, so helpful. And it really oftentimes, just like I said, it's sort of a decision maker when I can't make any more decisions. There's also sort of tricks to get it to give you the best answer. So those tricks are, prompts. How do we prompt it with good questions so it gives us good feedback? Um, Anything from this is the specific scenario that I have. Can you help me with whatever question I have. And then just kind of, having that conversation of asking you more specific questions and going deeper into the conversation. I have to say, sometimes it's good, sometimes it fails, right? Sometimes it hallucinates, it gives you bad answers. And typically you'll know what those are, but I find it very, very, very helpful. I wanted to show you a couple of just sort of silly examples of how I use it. On the right is just a picture that my parents sent me of their new dishwasher, and they said, "Oh, can you help us to use it?" And I said, "Well, oh, sure." So I loaded the picture into ChatGPT. I asked it to give me a step-by-step guide, and I just copied this guide and pasted it into my text messages and sent it back to my parents. And so did it solve their problem? I think it did. But of course, there's lots of other ways to interact with the tool. And I have a couple of screenshots. So this is a silly example of taking a picture of an open space and saying, "Please design it for me," right? I mean, it's not revolutionary. It's nothing that will change your life, but sometimes you need inspiration. So if it's something creative, it's a great way to kind of give you some feedback, and you don't have to, schedule a online designer. The other example um, is you can load images. So I wanted to show you how, when I get my blood test results, when I don't understand what those mean, and my mom is a physician and I don't have time to call her and have her look at my lab results, I load it into ChatGPT. And it's very easy. It's sort of, you can take a screenshot or upload it from your files on your phone or on your browser. And I basically say, "Can you summarize my results for me in plain language?" And ultimately give me some red flags, because I have to, get a blood workup every so often. And I don't necessarily understand the numbers. And it's a great way to kind of give me some good feedback. I'll fast forward. So it gives you a summary of the results. It gives you what are the red flags. It gives me some practical suggestions. So, do I believe this 100%? No. Do I send questions back to my medical provider? Absolutely. Or check it with a medical professional, but it's a great starting point. So I also wanted to give you some real world case examples from people who are supporting a loved one. This is someone who was helping take care of their mother and supporting their dad as they were going through sort of end of life decisions. And they use ChatGPT, they use Claude, they use these sort of chatbots to help them really comb through a lot of the ER visits, hospital stays, a lot of the documentation. Ultimately, this person's mother passed, but in their use case, really the benefits outweigh the concerns. So I know that the answers are not always 100% correct. There may be some privacy concerns, but I think if it makes sense to support you and what you need, it can be very, very helpful. I'm not going to go through all this because it's in my slides, but I thought this was such a great way from a real human being and how they're using this to support a loved one. Anything from asking questions about power of attorney, looking at lab results and saying, "Am I missing something? How are my parents? Here's a file of their spending. Is there something that we can comb through that I haven't recognized? How do I help my dad deal with his wife's health? Like, what are some suggestions?" So lots of, I think, really great ways to interact with the chatbot that can be very helpful. This is also a real person, a young person who developed what is called Aldermate. And it's really a simple voice phone companion for older adults, or for anybody really who needs to have a conversation and may not always have another person on the other side. This is not for everyone, but I think it's calming, it's interesting. Of course, please do some research if this is something that may be helpful. But sometimes it's challenging to have those conversations. And for those of you who have had experience with declining cognition, and can be very taxing to have a conversation with somebody who maybe doesn't recognize you anymore, or has changed their role and how they view you. So I by no means am I suggesting we outsource our human conversations, but this could really be helpful to alleviate some of those, taxing conversations that we may have. So it's just something to look into it and maybe helpful. I'm a little bit over, and I want to leave time for a great conversation. I see some comments in the chat, so I just wanted to say thank you. Apologies for throwing a lot out there, but I'm so passionate about technology and support, and would love to continue this conversation. So please email me. I'll be happy to schedule Zooms and talk more about any of the topics that I've covered.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. Reitz, and hopefully we can give her a virtual round of applause. Folks, feel free to still stay on. Thanks, Janet. Feel free to stay on. We have a lot of questions in the chat, and I'm sure many more to come through. Look at everyone using the reactions. I love it. So if you're still with me, Dr. Reitz, let's start from where we left off. So Jeffrey had a question about Microsoft Copilot compared with chat. I know you mentioned it briefly, but could you just repeat, maybe go into a little more detail?
Yes, absolutely. So great question. Copilot is more focused on supporting the Office Microsoft ecosystem. And so if you like Outlook, if you're using, Outlook for work or the Office 365 suite, Copilot will be sort of this kind of extension, AI extension tool for really the Office ecosystem. The way that I use ChatGPT is because I'm connected into the Google ecosystem, Gmail, Google Calendar. So the way that I use ChatGPT is I use it as a personal assistant, and I have given ChatGPT my Google account password, my calendar password, and it writes emails for me, and it schedules meetings. It doesn't confirm them until me as a human presses save, but it's a great way to kind of get things started. So if you're on Gmail, go with chat. If you're focused more on Office, I would say Copilot is a great tool.
Awesome. And next we had a comment from Brenda, which is definitely worth elevating here, just making sure that everyone knows when we are talking about using these AI assistants or things like ChatGPT, that of course there are mistakes there. And I think, like Dr. Reed said, that you can use this information, but of course you need to fact check it, share it with someone else if you're not sure if it's the proper information, but using it as possibly a launching pad or helpful information, but not you definitely have to take it all with a grain of salt.
Yes, absolutely. But I have to say, what I have also been doing with my parents is my mom gave away her password to her bank account and almost had fraudulent activity through the bank. And so I have now asked her to take a screenshot if she has a strange email or a weird text message, throw it into ChatGPT and say, is this a legitimate email? So whether it says yes or no, whether it's right or not, it can give you some good feedback. But of course, I'm sort of that second pass as she checks and makes sure that it's a legitimate email. But it's a great security tool to help you sort of narrow down, does this sound like it's really IRS or not?
And that's a good moment. I know there was a question later on. I'm happy to just share my screen. There was a question from someone wanting to know how to upload something to ChatGPT. So let me just show everyone quickly, and then you'll have it on this recording, which will be nice to go back to. But I pulled up ChatGPT on my screen. Hopefully everyone can see. And there's this button right here. You can click, and then there's an option to add photos and files, and you just click that. I do believe there are other ways to do it, but that is the way I prefer to do it. And then is there a cost associated to any of these, Dr. Reitz, that you know of?
So the base models are completely free. And if you would like the more enhanced version, so for example, ChatGPT version 5, it's like $19.99 a month. So if you're a power user, it has more abilities in if you're doing research, if you want things done really quickly, if you're putting financial models and you need things summarized. I would say the base free model is perfectly fine for general use. But if you would like the enhanced one, it's paid. Yep.
And I will say it can be helpful if you do log in because I believe you said this, Dr. Reitz, but it saves your information. So if you ask it something yesterday and you want to pull back that answer that you asked it yesterday because you might not remember, you can always just log into when you create your free account, so you can access previous questions you've asked. So Robin had a question about using AI for your resume. Do you have feedback on that? Have you experienced students or older folks reaching out to you about that?
Yes, and I have to say, because in our college we're STEM focused, we have 2,000 students looking for jobs. It's at this point, it's AI generated resumes talking to AI HR chatbots, basically. And I have to say, still a good resume is drafted by a human being. I always ask my students, I work more with grad students now, but I always say, please have a real person look through it. It can be helpful to generate things, but also now that we're using these tools so widely, you kind of know what sounds like ChatGPT, so you have to be conscious that, it's a real person behind the resume. But yes, absolutely, it can be so helpful to draft cover letters if you're applying to 10 different jobs. You just copy the job description, throw it into ChatGPT and say, these are my skills. Please write me a cover letter that's different for each of these particular jobs. And it will throw that out there in a couple of minutes. But please proofread it, of course.
Hmm. Let's see. Todd, I think, had a comment about how he was using Chat GPT for himself or someone you care for. If you want to have a conversation with them about a health problem, it's hard when you go to the doctor, maybe you don't remember the particular symptoms when it happened. So if you use ChatGPT like a journal, you can get advice and have it write a summary possibly for your doctor. It'll provide some suggestions, but obviously we know ChatGPT is not Dr. ChatGPT. So, but it can be helpful in remembering some of the symptoms you mentioned and then helping you lay that out in a way that it makes sense for you to present to your doctor or maybe share with someone else.
Exactly. And it's
That's
really
great.
great
Okay.
at detecting images as well. So if there's x-rays that you have access to from my chart, you can add those, as Ellie showed, with just a plus sign if you have the image on your phone, and it can give you an idea. Of course, it's not a radiologist. We're not trusting it, but it's a great way to sort of give you a first round of ideas of what it could be.
Dr. Reitz, if you are looking for your kind of first step into some smart technology at home for either yourself or someone you care for, do they have consultants that you can work with to find maybe what might be best for you? Or is a lot of that information just, you have to find online yourself?
Well, unfortunately, yes. And to be honest, I don't know if I would. There are companies out there, absolutely, that can come and sort of outfit your home with smart technology. I don't know if we all have sort of the funds and abilities to have a company like that come out. If you do, absolutely, and I'm sure there's lots of information. But to me, it's sort of figuring out what are the needs for your home and for your household. If somebody is having trouble walking up the stairs or can't see late at night or needs the thermostat changed remotely for them, I would just start with like what are the needs and what technologies are out there to support that particular need versus you're incorporating every single tool in your home and feeling overwhelmed. But I started with Alexa because it was just a conversational agent, and it was an easy sort of gateway technology to others.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions we have for Dr. Reitz while we have her here with us? See lots of friendly faces, so feel free to take yourself off mute if you do have a question.
Any comments on ChatGPT versus Gemini?
Yeah. Like I said, I think, chat is sort of the Swiss Army knife. All of these language models are great, and I think most of us are using chat, so it's feeding our conversations into it. So more data, better conversations, better outputs. I think honestly, it's a personal preference, and I have tried all of them. It's really the tone of the chatbot as well. I have trained, you can go into the settings of ChatGPT and have it trained how you would like it to talk to you, whether it's funny or more of a conversation, or more calm. So it's honestly just personal preference. I wouldn't say one is necessarily that much better than another.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Felicia. And we had one more from Janet, and I know you mentioned this a little bit in the beginning, Dr. Reitz, just about your possible data share with any information that you're uploading to some of these third-party sources. Do you want to touch on that just a bit more?
Sure, absolutely. Everything you're uploading, sensitive information, general conversations with chat or any of these bots, you should just assume that somebody is looking at that data. It's probably aggregated, but still nothing is secure. So everything you upload, whether it's your lab results, x-rays, sensitive questions, um, you should assume that it's out there, somebody has access to it, and it's being looked at for the betterment of the chatbot, but still it's something to have in the back of your mind. I have completely sort of release that anxiety about safety and security, because to me the positives outweigh the negatives. But there's just no way for us to protect ourselves. Every time we walk out the door, our data is being collected. So it's just one of those personal things that if you're okay with it, might as well get good use of the chatbot.
You said that ChatGPT is good with, excuse me, Google. I live in a world where Yahoo, is it better for Yahoo versus Microsoft Copilot?
Mhm. So if you're specifically thinking about basically connecting the tool to your email, um, ChatGPT is probably not the best one. I would say just use it separately, where you're writing an email and you copy and paste the prompt into ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, and it will sort of give you a different version of it. But to my knowledge, I don't think there's a tool that connects to Yahoo specifically. But there's still lots of useful ways for you to use that.
I just played the ChatGPT game briefly, and I asked Janet's question to ChatGPT itself. Of course, that's that's its own thing, but I put the response there for you, Janet, too, if you just wanted to read that. I know we are at time here, and Dr. Reitz has been so generous with her time, and I appreciate all of you staying on with us for this. This is not the end of this conversation. Hopefully, it's just the beginning for you all. This was recorded, so I'll be sending out the recording to everyone who registered, as well as the PowerPoint from Dr. Reitz and any additional resources I know she did mention in her presentation. So if you have questions, I know she has offered her time to connect with you, and I can offer myself as a resource as well. But thank you so much for joining us. And any parting words, Dr. Reitz, for us?
No, I'm just so excited to start the conversation and hopefully continue it, and would love to hear from you and hear about how you're using any of these tools. And if there's others that are, this is not an exhaustive list. I'd love to hear from your perspective. And if there's anything I need to include, that's really great. And I so appreciate you being here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great afternoon, and go Terps. Bye.